Hello, everybody. It's been a while since you've heard from me, and I have a lot to discuss and update everybody on. First of all, to all my friends and family, um, this is going to sound insane. I thought I was insane, and so after seeing two psychs and being released from a hospital with psychosis, I'm going to share my story. I have had other videos that explained what I had went through with the drugs and how I had recovered, but there was a big chunk of information that I left out because I thought I was losing my mind. So I hope that this will help some people out there. I hope that somebody might have answers. Maybe we can confer and discuss, but mostly I wanted to bring hope. So this story begins when I was using drugs. I didn't share with everybody, but I had been told that my cancer had metastasized to my kidneys, and I had given up on everything, and I didn't want to die a slow, painful death. So I decided to just kind of mercy killing myself. And I did a 2-gram shot of pure heroin, or uncut heroin, a whole handle of Jim Beam, and a full prescription for a month of gabapentin and Flexeril. And all in one night. And when I came to, my brain kind of had to reset. I had to learn how to walk again and how to talk. And I was having really bad seizures and things like that. But I didn't go to the hospital. I started using heroin again. That was back in late July of 2016. And when I continued using the drugs, I was starting to try to gradually wean myself off. I would feel better and not be in pain, so then I would postpone the next shot or something like that. And I noticed I was starting to feel or have emotions on the drug, and I was always combining it with either cocaine or methamphetamines. So I started to not use as often. It was like a gradual self-wean, and I was also connecting with people and having interest in things and stuff that normal addicts don't do, what we run from. So it seemed like no matter how much I'd use, I'd still have the emotion, so why use? And I had come across some interesting people, one of which was Stephen Furlong, my oldest brother-in-law. I had met up with him, and he took me to his friend's house, and we had kind of had a relationship, a consensual one, for about a week. After that week, I had just cut him off because I couldn't deal with his whining, and he was just miserable and using too much, and so I told him no. I was staying with his friends, Dennis and Larissa, and I was trying to help unpack to move, but we weren't really accomplishing much with the move. So I mostly was helping Dennis and Larissa kind of fix their relationship. And it was successful. But also they had, while they were reconnecting, Stephen had decided to take advantage of me while I had a meth crash after 6 days of no sleep. So I had woken up to my pants being at my knees, and Stephen had like a smirk on his face. It was creepy. And I told my friends, or his friends, and I explained like my pants were at my knees, like I know what happened, I remembered. And at the time I had one of my seizures, which kind of come with a tabula rasa effect, where I am a silly person who doesn't know anything about herself. So the fact that he knew I didn't know who I was, where I was, what the hell was going on, and still took advantage of me, knowing that I didn't want a relationship, had a huge effect on me. And if I found out that Dennis and Larissa didn't so much believe me, that I had been raped, and I had confronted Stephen, and I just, I told him, you didn't take my power away from me, and if you ever do that to somebody else, I will cut your dick and balls off. and I didn't feel comfortable in the situation I was in. I was outside and I was seeing people, and they say, you know, meth addicts, we see shadow people, but these were not shadow people. These were people, everything. They had faces, they had shoulders, they had everything. Clothes, you could see what they were wearing. You couldn't see their faces clearly, and they had been standing outside the whole time, just kind of watching me. And I felt uncomfortable with his friends not trusting that I was raped and him being the raper still in the house. So I had faked an episode where I couldn't walk so that they had to call an ambulance. And the ambulance came and took me to St. Anthony's North. After going to St. Anthony's North, I got put on a 72-hour psych hold, and I had no identification on me, so they couldn't prove who I was. That was a part of their releasing me off of my hold, and I didn't want to give them my identification because I had warrants in 3 counties. So I was like, I don't know how you're going to find this out, and just kind of hung out there, but talked to the psych and said everything was fine. I did do a rape kit for Steven while I was there, just because I didn't feel like he should have gotten away with it. But unfortunately, it was too long past the incident that there was nothing found. And I did get released within 12 hours of my 72-hour mental health hold after they got hold of my case manager at MHCD. And after that, I immediately went over to my youngest brother-in-law, Tommy's sober house. He was staying at the Carla Vista houses. And I was, let's see, I want to say 2 days into withdrawals. And I hadn't seen this kid in like a year, and his friends were like, oh, you're Alyssa, the one that Tommy always talks about. And I was like, he does? And we talked, and I was like, are you happy sober? Can you actually do it? Because every time I get sober, it's not the withdrawal so much as the week afterwards where you're empty, you don't feel a thing, or there's just no feeling. And he said, yeah, it's great, you can do it. And he had inspired me, or he gave me hope to get sober. So I had called, and by the next day I was staying at the girls' Carla Vista sober house. I was hanging out with Tommy here and there every day, and we didn't talk about anything, but I felt comfortable around him. And I wanted to hang out with him one day, but he was busy. So I ended up getting a hold of one of my old dope friends got a hold of me, wanted to see me, knew I was sober, and came out. And I ended up using that day because I was sick of it. I was just like, ugh, no support, don't feel good. And I had money, so I went and got a 0.5 gram and used again. Well, at that point, I was planning a final suicide where I was going to hang myself. And so I went and saw Tommy one more time, and we slept together just that once. And I told him I was going to hospice care. And I ended up going back to the streets with the rest of the dope little entourage there. And I met a dope dealer that was new in town. His name was Dustin. And he was with a girl and broke up with her the next day. So me and him decided to be an item. And I was paying him for my dope, but there was weird things going around. Sirens, you could hear sirens constantly, and you could see people around all the time, just watching and following. And I had decided to help him sell his dope for a little bit, and people were following me. I would ask other people, like, do you see this? Does that look odd to you? And I wasn't being paranoid. There were actually people following me, their cars, fleet cars, tinted windows, fleet plates, the red ones. They always had just no way to see who's inside. And they were always like strength in numbers. It almost looked like I had an army following me. And once I pointed this out to other people, they started pushing me away. They were like, look, you're too paranoid. You're making us paranoid. And I'm like, how am I making you paranoid? I'm just showing you what's around. And we were in an abandoned house, and they would even come in the house at night. even some cops came in one night with flashlights, and we just sat still and we didn't get arrested or anything. And the weird thing was is that these people would watch us and never act. It was just like they were watching. Dustin had a friend, Cody, who had gotten arrested by the feds for selling. So he was kind of cautious about a federal case coming up against him, yada, yada, yada. Long story short, me and Dustin had split up, and I came back to get some stuff, and I was watching his house, and it was like timed intervals where people walking dogs would walk past the front of the house and kind of watch and see who's in there. And there was always certain cars driving up and down the street, and repeat cars. Same thing, fleet plates, tinted windows, and it was just too timed perfectly, so you could tell that somebody was watching. And I decided to let him know and sat outside all day and kind of watched the people come and go and how they would interact and just people watch all day. And at the end of it, he had determined that I was out of my mind, but he had left for the evening, and I came back to the house after going to 7-Eleven, and there was a girl walking up the street that looked kind of homeless, and I asked her for a cigarette, and she said she didn't smoke. When I got back to the house, it was kind of like a trap house. I got there with a friend, Wayne, and he got, like, red lights came on, and he got arrested. And then I went to the back, and there were people under the trees with tablets, but they moved funny. It wasn't like normal movements whatsoever. And I knew I wasn't paranoid or freaking out because I hadn't had any drugs in a little while. And I could have sworn someone had an assault rifle pointed at my head, and I had to sit still. And you could see them watching for other people coming to the house. And I was so afraid to move that the sprinklers came on, and the girl that I asked for a cigarette was sitting there, and she said, maybe you should start hanging out at a different house. And I was like, oh God, I just saw you, like, how many people are a part of this? Well, Dustin came back, and I had explained to him what I had went through and what the sirens were and everything like that. And I got a fresh change of clothes, and all of his friends thought I was out of my mind. He tried to have them tell me he was just a weed dealer, so I didn't ask for any dope. And I was just trying to explain to him, like, look, this is their house, this is where I've seen them stay. And he was just sick of hearing my paranoia story, and we ended up getting in a fight, which caused me to fight with another girl he had brought over about getting my hoodie. And on my way away from, like, I was walking towards Federal and Evans, a fleet of cars were saluting me. They were laughing. They were like, good job, way to stand your ground, or whatever. And these people were in groups huddled around, just like pointing, watching me. And the weird part is that they were laughing at my jokes I would make in my head, because I had to use the bathroom. I had to go poop really bad, and I was like, oh, this is shitty, and excuse the pun. And everybody was laughing, but it was something that I had thought in my head. It wasn't ever reiterated out loud. So these people were, like, trying to donate money to me when I went to the 7-Eleven to use the bathroom. They're like, here's a phone for her, here's money. They're doing a collection, and I can hear them in the bathroom, and they're like, here, this is for the girl. But they're not saying anything, so I can hear their thoughts. At that point, I'm like, I don't know what drugs I did, but whatever it is, it was no good. I've seen people that are there, they fade. They would be on the lamppost, the lights, and then they would be, like, dangling, and then they would just disappear as I got closer. And so then these people had collected this money that I was supposed to pick up, or someone was going to bring to me. And I thought that Dustin came after me after I left his house, because I could see him around, but I couldn't get close enough to see features. And then all of my friends from the streets were with him, which was impossible because everybody was not at the same location. So these people were able to make my friends appear, their voices, and I went in a loop-de-loop all around the Federal area. And they had me thinking that Dustin thought I was going to turn him in for his dope dealing. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't care. But you don't treat me good, so keep away, basically. And the people would appear in trucks, and then I'd get up to the car and they'd disappear. Or they would appear on a lawn if I was supposed to go to the lawn, and then I'd get there and they'd disappear. And I finally got arrested by District 4 that day for not leaving a house that I walked into looking for Dustin. And they found 2 forms of identification for my maiden name and my married name. And so I had to go back to the DDC in custody. These people did try to prevent me from going to jail. They told the cop at District 4 that had me in the holding cell to, you don't know who you are, and they destroyed my backpack so that there was no evidence or identification on me. So I was supposed to play dumb, and then I was talking with somebody else in the paddy wagon, and she was asking me my name, and I was like, well, I'm Alyssa Furlong. So then the driver looked up my name and realized that I had escaped from the downtown detention center before, and he was like, oh, no, you have a name, and you're going there. And I was like, no, please, I don't want to die in jail, because I thought I only had a few months left to live at that. And he was like, no, you're going. And we got to the DDC, and the cop, his badge number is S06061, really old guy, works in booking all the time. He the officers was like, do you know who this is? And he was like, I think so, but if she has the footprints, and as you can see I have my kid's footprints on my chest, then I know exactly who she is. And I was having kind of like a little paralysis moment because I really didn't want to be in there. Last time I was there I tried escaping, and so I always get thrown in max, too able. And yes.